see where it takes us. Okay. So we'll continue with our discussion on the electronic energy scale, vibrational and rotational energy scales of diatomic molecules. And today we are going to discuss the optical spectrum, basically. So if I do experiments of emission and absorption, then how do this, electronic states, vibrational, rotational states, etc., manifest in the uh, observed optical spectrum? So that's the target for today. Okay. Okay. So we already saw that, particularly if we are focusing on diatomic molecules, then we can think of their degrees of freedom in terms of electronic, vibrational, and rotational. Of course, they are coupled, but to the lowest degree of approximation, we can already get a lot of physics out of it just by considering them as decoupled, etc. Okay? And decoupled doesn't mean completely disassociated, because the electronic degrees of freedom involve the nuclear separation, capital R, and that goes into the vibrational spectrum also as a potential, basically, and this Morse potential kind of a feature, etc. We get. The minimum of which is the interatomic distance for the molecule in equilibrium. And then we had this rotational degree of freedom also of the two molecules. So these two molecules, given any axis around this Z, its center of mass line, so it can keep rotating, etc. So we had these three basically degrees of freedom, and of course we made a lot of approximations other than the coupling between these degrees of freedom also, etc. So for example, we ignored spin orbit coupling, spin nucleus coupling, and of course coupling between these three degrees of freedom, etc. Okay. So today let's proceed with that this approximation itself, and let's talk about the optical spectrum of molecules. So the full wave function of molecules, if I see, I can write it as the product of the electronic, vibration, and rotational degrees of freedom. That's what we did. Basically, we started with a coupled equation, which is all three degrees of freedom. We wrote down the problem in terms of the center of mass coordinate, the difference coordinate for the nucleus, and the electronic coordinates, basically. And that allows us to write this three differential equations separately for the three terms, as long as I can do this Born-Oppenheimer approximation. Okay. So I had this electronic wave part of the wave function, and then the vibrational and the rotational part of the wave function I was able to separate from the Born-Oppenheimer approximated this nuclear part of the Hamilton. And this also gives us these degrees of freedom that this S electronic states are labeled by this S, and recall that this S involved quantum numbers which are something like the principal quantum number n is equal to 1, n is equal to 2, n is equal to 3, and the capital lambda also, and the spin quantum number. So the total spin quantum number, the capital lambda, the Z component of the angular quantum number, and these basically. The vibrational degrees of freedom were pure, one dimensional harmonic oscillator, etc. So they are just quantified by 1 degree of freedom, one quantum number, which is the level number, basically. Okay. And the rotational degrees of freedom are at least quantified by two quantum numbers, which is this K and Mk, basically, depending on the total angular momentum of the atom. Yeah. So this is the total angular momentum of the molecule and its Z component, basically. Okay. And recall that this K and Mk dependent on the Lz also, basically. Okay. And K is the total angular momentum of the spin of the electrons plus the angular momentum of the electrons plus the nucleus. So that was our starting point, and the total energy EA you can write as a combination of these three quantum sets of quantum numbers S, nu, and K. S corresponds to the electronic degrees of freedom, nu to the vibrational, K to the rotational motion, etc. K can also be written as R for rotational, and these are the sum of these three terms. So these are the approximation that we did, and within this approximation, I can just write them as separate terms, basically. I've ignored spin orbit coupling, spin nuclear spin coupling, and we have ignored the coupling between these degrees of freedom also. Okay. Okay. And we saw that Es prime R particularly, so the electronic part of the energy we could write an ESR0, so the part which came from the electronic part of the wave function, plus some part which comes from this nuclear part also, etc. And since this appears as a sort of a potential in the nuclear part, we can sort of add no, these two terms of the nuclear energy to the electronic energy, etc. Okay. So lambda square h square by 2 mu r naught square. If it is a finite lambda, a molecule is in a finite eigenstate of the LZ operator, then this term becomes finite. And then we had these two other terms, which was Lx square plus Ly square, etc. And recall that these are not good quantum numbers, etc. So these have to be explicitly calculated. And the E nu, we approximated. The simplest approximation was that near the minima of this ESR potential well, we can approximate this as a quadratic potential. And then this quadratic potential just became, some half k r minus r naught whole square, etc. And the problem of the equation of the radial, so the internuclear separation coordinate just became a 1D harmonic oscillator problem, basically. Okay, and that gave us this h bar omega naught nu plus half. The energy scales, basically, where these news can take integer values starting from 0, 1, 2, and so on. So, okay. And then we saw that, of course, you can calculate this numerically if you know ESR, but Morse gave a very nice potential, etc. And if you use the Morse potential, which include the asymmetry of, left side and the right side, etc. of this potential, then you can still get an analytical answer which is more close to the real answer, etc. So you get this harmonic oscillator term h bar omega naught nu plus half, plus you get this extra correction which is minus h omega naught by 4 dE. Recall that dE was the dissociation energy from the this ES, the minimum point of the ES, and 0 basically, wherever ES goes to at infinity. So the difference was this dissociation energy. So h omega by 4 dissociation energy times nu plus half whole square. Okay. So in the last class, I had missed writing the square here, and that was an error in my notes. Okay. Okay. So this is the linear harmonic oscillator energy, plus this correction comes from this n-harmonic terms of the Morse potential, if you like. So this prefactor h omega by 4 beta naught 4 dE is called beta, which is typically very, very less than 1. Basically, so it's a small correction relatively. And this is called n-harmonicity constant. Okay. And this we know by experiments, basically. Okay, so we have experiments. There are a lot of results which come from the spectral lines, etc. And we can measure the separation between these vibrational degrees of freedom. And we know that these terms are sort of small. Okay? But now our experimental capability is such that we can still measure them. So we know that this really works sort of really, really well. Okay. And then we had this, basically, that the ER, so the rotational degree of freedom, gave me an energy which was some proportionally constant V, which is basically a square by mu r naught whole square. R naught is the mean separation, etc., times the quantum number for the total angular momentum of the nuclear angular momentum, basically. So B times k plus 1, where recall that this k has to be larger than lambda, where lambda was the eigenvalue of the LZ operator, the mod of the eigenvalue of the LZ operator, etc. Plus, there are a lot of corrections, etc., which we were trying to derive in the last class, etc. But for simply just understanding the nature of the optical transitions and what will be the dominant optical transitions, we can just use the simplest approximation. We can just use ESR naught, ignore these two terms. Anywhere in front of ESR, these involve the nuclear mass in mu, etc. So these are likely to be small corrections. So we can throw them out. We can just use the harmonic potential approximation because we have a good intuition for that. We understand that very well, etc. Equispaced energy lines. So we'll use that. And for the ER, we'll just use this just to get some initial idea of this basically approximate states, etc. Okay. And before we proceed, so I have a small exercise for you, etc. So we had this E nu R, some potential, let's say, which we calculated from the electronic states, right? And then if I do the centrifugal correction basically, right? So then that is just given by L square by 2m R square. And L square in our case basically happens to be the whole molecule's angular momentum, which is given by capital K. So K plus 1 is its eigenvalue times h bar square is its eigenvalue. So capital K whole square or K plus 1 h bar whole square divided by 2m R square. So if this is the sort of a potential, then what is the minimum of this potential? Let's say, even if I do not know the form of E nu, okay. So what is the general form? And then if this potential I assume to be, half K R minus R naught square basically. So minima is at R naught. Then what is the correction I get from here basically? Okay. And remember that this K is the angular momentum. Here this K is a small k. So the spring constant, etc. And then if I use this, let's say, Morse potential, etc., that E nu potential is dE 1 minus e to the power minus alpha R minus R naught whole square kind of a potential. Then what is the minimum internuclear separation basically? So that's a problem for you to solve. You solve it and you can tell me the answer in the next class. Let's say. Okay. Okay. So that's the energy scales discussion, etc. So let's proceed with the optical EA. But before we proceed, some pictures for getting the broad idea. So this is the harmonics. On the left, I have the harmonic approximation, and I get this equispaced energy lines, etc. etc. Okay. And on the right, I had this Morse potential kind of a thing, basically, right? And I had this different energy lines corresponding to the different new states, basically. Okay. And given the vibrational and the rotational degrees of freedom, etc., etc., so you can show that as you increase the vibrational degrees of freedom, you also get corrections to R, basically. Okay. And this dot here basically shows the location of this R. So if I go to higher vibrational degree of freedom, then my interatomic distance on an average, if I calculate the expectation value, that will sort of change. Okay. So that's what it shows here. For the harmonic oscillation, this remains constant in whatever new state I am in. So that's your, electronic state. So here, the whole of this blue curve is one electronic state. The lowest energy, the sigma electronic state corresponding to capital lambda is equal to 0. And within this one electronic state, I have this lot of, vibrational states. Okay. And just, more fuller picture is here basically. So I have here two electronic states, so E1 and E2. So two blue curves, let's say. And in each of these blue curves, I have a lot of vibrational levels. Nu is equal to 0, nu is equal to 1, nu is equal to 2, nu is equal to 3, and so on. Sort of equispaced approximately. And, some corrections, but small corrections, etc. Okay. And then for each of these vibrational states, I have this K is equal to 0, K is equal to 1, K is equal to 2, K is equal to 3, etc. Different rotational states basically. Okay. So E prime. So this black lines basically which cross completely this my electronic potential, etc. are the vibrational states, and each vibrational state, a lot of small lines are there. There's the rotational levels basically. So this is the picture to keep in mind, even if you do not follow the mathematics, even if you do not follow the derivation, etc. This is the broad picture which you should keep in mind, etc. And this will be extremely useful when we discuss the excited states, which I will see in optical emission and absorption experiments. Okay, so this was sort of a revision for what we have been doing in the last few classes. Then let's go to the interaction with light, basically, right? So absorption and emission experiments. Okay. So we will be interested in the interaction of these molecules with light, right? And this is dictated primarily by the electric dipole operator, right? So this we did in detail. So there's two ways to include light matter interaction. One is the velocity gauge, one was the length gauge. We did both of these exercises, etc. So in the velocity gauge, I do this minimal coupling, which is in the Hamiltonian, P goes to P minus A by C, and then I can do an expansion. So H of P plus or rather minus EA by C times dou H by dou K. If the Hamiltonian was in the momentum, dou H by dou P, if Hamilton, so that was the length gauge, etc. And then, sorry, that was the velocity gauge. And in the length gauge, I used the electromagnetic field to just add a E times phi potential, basically, to this the Hamiltonian, etc. Right? And if I proceed with that calculation, I can show that the central thing which decides the light matter interaction is this expectation value of this charge of the electron in the atom, etc., or the expectation value of this R operator, right, which is intrinsically connected to the dipole, basically. So likewise in molecules also, the same physics sort of plays out, and what is responsible for this light matter coupling is this dipole operator. So the dipole is for a molecule is given by this sum over the coordinates of the nuclear charge into the nuclear charge ZiRi, basically sum over all the nucleus molecules. So in diatomic molecules, sum over I is A and B molecule. That's it. And then I have the sum over the coordinates of all the electrons basically. So Rj. Okay. So if I have one electron, sum over one. If I have two, sum over two, and so electronic charge sum, and the whole thing is multiplied by E, which is greater than 0. So 1.9 10 to the power minus 19 coulomb, which is the charge of the electron. The sign of the electron is taken care of by this negative sign. Is there a question or any comment? Okay. Else, let's proceed. Okay. So then this was a dipole operator because this capital R and the small r are both quantum mechanical sort of operators in this light interaction picture. Any operator, I can calculate the expectation value by sandwiching it between, bra and ket states basically. Okay. So in this dipole matrix element, dAA will denote the diagonal elements of this dipole, or and if dA is finite, let's say, then even without applying light, I have a finite dipole moment in the system. So these are called sort of permanent dipole electric dipoles. Okay? And the reason these are called permanent dielectric electric dipole is that if I shine light, then I am expecting that I'll be inducing transitions between states A and B, etc. Right? But if I calculate between AA, then I do not even have optical transitions. So I have a dipole element dipole in the system, physically observable expectation value of the dipole moment operator in the system, even for diagonal terms, etc. Right? So I have a permanent electric dipole. And this permanent dielectric electric dipole is very, very important for causing these optical transitions we will see, etc. Right? Okay, but this is important for what will be emission and absorption basically experiments. Okay. We have another kind of experiments which are called the scattering experiments, etc. So in scattering experiments, you will find that this the interband dipole matrix elements, so DAB, etc., become more important. Okay. And they will give rise to what is called Rayleigh scattering, Raman scattering. We will see a bit today, but otherwise. Okay. Okay. So for the, let's say, for absorption emission, DA, the diagonal parts of this dipole operator will become more important. And in particular, if you consider homonuclear molecules, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, and things like that, then they have this parity symmetry, right? So the whole coordinate is symmetric around the origin, basically. So I change R2 minus R. That's a parity operator. The Hamiltonian commutes with that operator, basically. Okay. And if you have this parity operator finite, basically, then you can show that DAA will vanish for non-degenerate levels, because the expectation value of capital R and this R, etc., have the opposite signs basically for plus R and minus R. So that you can show explicitly, and then the DAA will vanish basically for non-degenerate levels. All the non-degenerate levels will be eigenstates of the parity operator. All the degenerate states can break the parity, etc., etc. So all the non-degenerate levels, basically DA vanishes, and I almost get no absorption and no emission basically. So the whole of rotational and vibrational molecule motion, preserve this basically parity symmetry, right? So I am vibrating the molecule, the parity symmetry is still preserved. I am rotating the molecule, the parity symmetry is still sort of preserved basically. Okay. And then the dipole matrix element identically vanishes for transitions between these rotational and vibrational degrees of freedom. And because of this, the electronic transitions basically, uh, so there cannot be any vibrational or rotational transitions because of this finite dipole matrix element. Okay. So the only transition that can happen because of this electronic transitions basically. Okay. Because the electronic transitions need not conserve the uh, dipole moment. So that's the main idea, that for homonuclear molecules, I'll have almost no vibration and almost no rotational excitation spectrum. The whole of excitation spectrum will only come from electronic transitions. Okay? But if you have heteronuclear molecules, diatomic molecules, which are, let's say carbon monoxide, CO or CH or some such thing, etc., then you'll have a finite dipole matrix element, and then you start getting this, spectrum which corresponds to both rotational and vibrational degrees of freedom. Okay, so suppose you have this, etc., then you can start asking, what is the selection rule, basically. Okay. So the first selection rule you can think of is, light carries momentum of unit 1, h bar, basically. So any transition that I do has to be, accompanied in the atom or in the molecule by a angular momentum change of the same quantity, plus minus 1, basically. Okay. So if the electronic Lz quantum number is 0, lambda is 0 basically, then that implies delta K has to be plus minus 1. And delta K is equal to plus minus 1 implies that delta Mk can be, either 0 or plus minus 1, basically. So that is the angular momentum selection rule, let's say. Okay. And if lambda is not 0, etc., then of course I can have, delta K is 0 is also allowed. And that is because, I can change the angular momentum of both the electrons and the nucleus, etc., such that the total delta K is 0. But I have still changed the angular momentum of the, let's say, electronic states and so on. Okay. So if lambda is not 0, then I can have delta K is equal to 0. Otherwise, no. Okay. And delta K is equal to 0 or plus minus 1, delta Mk still will be 0 or plus minus 1, basically. So these are the two selection rules basically, separate for lambda is equal to 0 and different for lambda not equal to 0. Okay. And they basically arise from the fact that, photon carries an angular momentum of 1 h bar. If lambda is equal to 0, then delta K has to change by at least 1 unit basically. So nuclear angular momentum has to change by 1 unit because the electronic angular momentum is not changing, right? And the electronic spin angular momentum sort of cannot change total, though the LZ one can change, etc. So then delta has to change by 1, basically. But if lambda is not equal to 0, then the electronic angular momentum can change and the nuclear angular momentum can also change such that, 1 unit of light's angular momentum is accommodated and still I may have delta K is equal to 0, basically. Okay. So delta K is equal to 0 is allowed and plus minus 1 of course is allowed, basically. Okay. So that's your, angular momentum sort of selection rule without doing explicit calculation, just motivating, let's say, phenomenologically. And in addition to this, the electric dipole basically, uh, is always directed towards this z-axis, which is the internuclear axis, basically. Okay. And because of this, you will have this additional selection rule that, delta lambda has to be 0. Okay. So I'm not deriving this, I'm just stating this, but you can also derive this. Okay. So that's first half, let's say, the angular momentum sort of selection rules. Okay. Okay. Then second, if there is a change in the vibrational state, nu goes from no 0 to 1 or 1 to 2 or 1 to 3, etc. Then we always need to have this delta k is equal to plus minus 1. Okay, so this is accompanied with vibrational transitions, etc. Then this I cannot have delta k is equal to 0. Okay. Okay. Then, so that also implies that I can have pure rotational spectrum also when delta nu doesn't change, etc. And in that case, the spectral lines for will lie in the sort of microwave region or at the end of the infrared region, etc. And pure rotational spectrum will be given by this ER of k plus one. K is the angular momentum, total angular momentum quantum number minus ER of k basically, right? And the energy difference is basically the emitted photon energy, h nu, etc. K for transition between k rotational states of k and k plus 1, etc. And this now you can calculate with b times k. So this was k plus 1. Remember, ER of k plus 1 is uh, so ER of k was b times k, k plus 1, right? So ER of k plus 1 is b times k plus 1 times k plus 1 plus 1, which is k plus 2. And ER of k is, b of k, k minus 1. So I can take k plus 1 common, and then I'm just left with basically k plus 2 minus k, which gives me 2. So 2b times k plus 1. Okay. And recall that, k is always larger than or equal to delta. So these are the sort of pure rotational spectrum lines basically, which are given by this 2b k plus 1, etc. in the far infrared or microwave region. Okay. So if you do experiments and you observe this kind of lines, basically 2b k plus 1, which correspond to only a rotational spectrum, etc. Then just by picking up the difference of these spectral lines, you can actually calculate b. And now we are able to calculate this b's by to reasonably very high accuracy. And once you have this b, then you can easily calculate this r0 by using the relation that b was just h0 square divided by this moment of inertia. Right? So h0 by 2 times mu r naught square, and mu roughly I know from other experiments. Then you can just determine r. So this is roughly one way to decide determine r0. Okay. So that's the broad picture of transitions, etc. Questions? So I can have transitions between rotational states. I am looking at this kind of energy scales. I can have transitions between vibrational states. Then I am looking at infrared energy scales. Otherwise, I am looking at microwave energy scales. And then I can have transitions between electronic energy levels and between this sort of bound electron states or bound electron state and continuum of electron states, right? So dissociated molecule states, etc. And those are sort of uh, visible or UV region, basically. Okay. So that's the picture to keep in mind. And these were the sort of selection rules, etc. Okay. Then let's go to some more detail about what is called this vibrational and rotational spectrum. So we just saw pure rotational spectrum, right? Uh, let's go to vibrational rotational spectrum, okay? Because vibration degree of freedom and the rotation degree of freedom will turn out to be coupled, basically. Okay? And the reason is that I always need to change k by 1, etc. Okay? Delta k has to be plus minus 1 if I have a vibrational transition. So they are always coupled. So vibrational degrees of freedom are always, so this optical spectrum of vibrations is always accompanied by rotation, etc. And together they are called vibrational rotational spectrum, etc. Okay. So let's calculate that this vibrational rotational spectrum, and for that I should be able to calculate the matrix element of the dipole operator. So this d has to be a vector, okay, between psi nu and psi nu prime, basically both of which are sort of wave functions centered around r minus r naught. So remember r was centered around r naught for the harmonic oscillator. So the simplest approximation I already said we can work in the linear harmonic oscillator eigenstates approximation. You can also work with the eigenstates with the Morse potential, etc., but they're slightly more complicated. While we already know the algebra of the Hermite polynomials, etc., very, very well. So we will be using this, let's say, linear harmonic oscillator eigenfunction, and that will already give you nice results. Okay. Okay. So immediately we see that if D is independent of R, then orthogonality of these guys, etc., nu and nu prime, etc., will give me that the dipole matrix element is 0. Okay. Okay. So that's number one. So then let me assume that dr is a complicated function of r, etc., and you do a Taylor series expansion. So dr is equal to d of r naught plus r minus r naught dr by dr at r naught plus quadratic order terms and so on. And the reason for doing this approximation or this expansion is that as compared to the internuclear, intermolecular sort of distance, basically, right? The vibration distance r minus r naught is going to be a small quantity. Okay, if that is going to be a small quantity, then this number r minus r naught is going to be a small quantity, and quadratic number is going to be an even smaller quantity, and so on. So we can do the best approximation, just keep the lowest order term. So this guy, I already argued that will give me 0 because nu and nu prime will make it sort of orthogonal. Then the only non-zero term is this plus higher order corrections, etc., which I know to be small. So let me do this calculation, then I'll worry about the higher order corrections, etc. If this doesn't give me the right physics, if it already gives me a good understanding of the experiments, etc., then I need not bother about the higher order correction. Okay. So that's the idea. Okay. So then the dipole you can sort of expand as d of r naught plus r minus r naught times some constant. So this is the constant dr by r calculated at r naught. Okay. So that's the sort of a constant. Okay. Okay, so then let me take the expectation value between nu and nu prime states basically. So the first term with dr naught will give me 0 because of the orthogonality of nu prime and nu. And I am looking at optical transitions which involve vibrational level change, etc. So nu prime is not equal to nu, etc. Okay, and then I get this term which is c times psi nu prime star r minus r naught times psi nu basically. Okay, and that's just an integral of this particular form, sin nu prime of x times sin nu of x times dx basically. And now we need to go into the details of the wave function just to calculate this quantity. So let's go to the Hermite polynomial sort of basis, not worrying about the normalization and nu. Then I had a weight factor e to the power minus alpha square x square by 2 for each of the new levels. And the new levels were given by h nu of alpha x. And recall that alpha was related to the oscillation frequency by this particular form. So mu omega naught by h bar under root. So that was my alpha. Okay. So then I can just rewrite this integral in the form which is similar to the calculation of x expectation value for the harmonic oscillator basically, right? So I had this kind of an integral minus infinity to plus infinity psi n x x psi m x basically. And recall that this integral is from 0 to infinity, but this integral is centered around r naught, right? And if I look at uh, states around r naught, etc., then they are going to decay wherever the sort of the states hit the edge of this harmonic potential well, basically. So without any loss of accuracy, I can actually convert this integral limit from minus infinity to plus infinity because I already know that at minus infinity all the wave functions will go to 0 and so on. Right? In fact, all the wave functions are centered around r naught and so on. So is it identical to this calculation, etc., with some minor approximation. And this you can easily calculate by fitting in this formula and using the properties of the Hermite polynomial, etc. Okay. And if you calculate this, you get this that this guy is just 0 if m not equal to n, This guy is given by half of this quantity, root over n plus 1 by 2, if m is equal to n plus 1, and it is given by half of n by 2 if m is equal to n minus 1, basically. Okay. So that's your this thing. And the easiest way to derive this is to recall the Hermite polynomial recursion relation basically. So 2 alpha x times h nu of alpha x is related to 2 nu of h nu minus 1 plus h nu of h of nu plus 1 basically. So use this uh, recursion relation, and then we use the orthogonality relation of the Hermite polynomials, that h nu times h nu prime with the appropriate weight function, which is given by this guy e to the power minus alpha square x square. Uh, if I combine two wave functions, then the two will go away. So with the appropriate wave, this weight function, etc., are orthogonal. So I use that, then I can easily derive this relation, basically, whatever is listed here. Okay. But most importantly, this shows that I nu prime is 0 unless nu prime is nu plus 1 or nu minus 1, basically. Right? So this should be nu minus 1. So that gives you this vibrational spectrum selection rule, basically. Okay. So explicit calculation using this harmonic oscillator states. And this works also if you use more complicated states of the Morse potential, etc. So we have not done explicitly that calculation, but if you do, you will find that this selection rule is sort of a robust to that. And one way to see that is that our energy eigenstates were harmonic oscillator eigenstates for the Morse potential plus some small correction, where I already argued that the unharmonicity parameter was sort of small. So wave function will also have corrections which will be beta square and so on. Okay. So the wave function will have small corrections, etc. So whatever deviation I'll get from this rule, it will be sort of negligible, etc. Okay, so actually, so if you include corrections beyond quadratic in H, etc., so the anharmonic terms, including Morse potential, etc., then you can get this kind of excitations, etc. That delta nu or nu prime minus nu is 2, 3, 4, etc. But these are sort of very very small, and at least one order of magnitude smaller than the these transitions, basically. Okay. So we will just focus on these transitions, etc., which are in the gray box, because they are sort of dominant transitions and most accurately observed in, most likely to be observed in experiments. Okay. So that's number one for vibrational transitions, that my delta nu has to be plus minus 1. Okay. Number one. Then if delta nu is plus minus 1, then it has to change its angular momentum by 1 unit. That is number 2, basically. And no, that I already argued. And that is why these vibrational states are always coupled to rotational transitions. Okay. Okay. So that's number 2. So that's why these are vibrational. So you'll never get a pure vibrational spectrum. You will always get a vibrational rotational spectrum. Okay. Okay. So now let's go to more specifics. What are the states, etc. Just like Paschen bracket Balmer lines, we will get here a different series, basically, which are called as P branch, Q branch, R branch, etc. For historic reasons, whoever found them called them by that name, etc. And it continues. Okay. So suppose I am in the ground state of the molecule, etc., which is the sigma state, or capital lambda is equal to 0 state, basically. And I do a transition from nu k to nu plus 1 k prime, basically. Then, of course, nu and nu plus 1 have to be connected by plus minus 1. So this is fixed, basically. So I cannot do anything. And I have already chosen that I am doing a absorption transition, basically. So I will go from nu to nu plus 1. I have specifically chosen that. Okay. So then I have two choices of connecting from k to k prime, basically, right? So one I can choose to be go to the next k prime, basically. So the k prime can be k plus 1. Okay. So all such transitions are called the R branch. Okay. And then I can have another choice that k prime can be k minus 1. So all such transitions are called the P branch. And then there is another set of transition, etc., which is called the Q transition, which I'll come to in a minute. Okay. But let's talk about this R branch and the P branch first. So R branch, basically, let's calculate the energy of transitions. So H times nu R is equal to E times this nu plus 1. So the final state energy times K. Okay. Okay. So obviously some typo here. So E times nu plus 1 times K plus 1, basically, right? So I go to K plus 1 state, okay, and minus the initial energy, which is E nu K. Okay. Okay. Now nu K and K energies are sort of coupled. So I get a H bar omega naught nu plus 1 plus half minus nu plus half, basically. So if I subtract, I get this first term H bar omega naught, and then the rotational energies, if I take a difference, etc., then I already show that I get this kind of a term 2b times K plus 1, where K runs from 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. So this is the energies of the R branch, etc. So I get this vibrational transition energy, plus I'll get some correction which will come from this rotational degrees of freedom. And recall that this B number is much smaller than H bar omega naught generally. So that's my R branch. Then if you talk about this P branch, etc., then you have H nu P, and now I'll go from a K minus 1, let's say, to a K. So nu plus 1 K minus 1 minus E of nu K, basically. So now I'm going from K minus 1 to K, let's say. Okay. So here I'll start getting a 2B times K with a minus sign. So minus 2BK plus H nu. Or H bar omega naught. Okay, so if it is H bar, then it should just be omega naught. So this radial frequency and not the actual frequency. Okay? So H bar omega naught. So that's the P branch, basically. Okay. So the P branch is generally lower in energy because of this minus 2BK than the R branch, etc. And together these two will combine to form what is called as vibrational rotational bands. And this is, I am doing intervibrational states transition. So I am in the infrared part of the electromagnetic spectrum. Okay, so this is a picture. So recall just, vibrational were sort of, this widely separated lines within this electronic state, etc. And each of these vibrational states had this lot of rotational lines, etc. Okay, so I have this kind of a picture. Let's say I start from nu is equal to 0. The top, I have a nu is equal to 1 states, etc. And then for each of this nu, I have a lot of k's. K is equal to 0, 1, 2, 3 is what I have shown here. And K is equal to 0, 1, 2, 3 for the nu is equal to 1 is the top four lines, basically. Then I can do this kind of transitions. I can go from K is equal to 0 to K is equal to 1. So the first red line, then K is equal to 1 to K is equal to 2, second red line, and K is equal to 2 to K is equal to 3, the third line, and I'll have higher transitions like this, etc. So that's number one, absorption transitions. Okay. So those are the R states, basically. And then I also have this P states, etc., where I go from a higher K state to a lower K state. So I go from a K is equal to 1 to K is equal to 0. I go from a K is equal to 2 to K is equal to 1, and K is equal to 3 to K is equal to 2. Okay. So recall that in all of this, delta K is plus 1, and here delta K is minus 1 in the orange lines or P branch, basically. Okay, so in the, if I just plot energy on the x-axis, so this, let's say energy is the x-axis, etc. Then I had H nu 0 somewhere, right? H nu 0 I'll never observe, basically, which is just nu 0 minus this thing, nu 1 energy, etc. And then I have this P states, which were this negative branch, so H nu 0 minus 2BK, right? So H nu 0 minus, P is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. And we continue in the left. And on the right, I'll have this R0, R1, R2, R3, R4, R5, and it will continue, basically. And remember that P, I had a separation of minus 2BK. And on the R branch, I had a separation of 2B times K plus 1, basically. So, and K can start from 0 here. For the P branch, K has to start from 1, basically. So that's your energy spectrum. So now if you calculate the separation between 1P and the first R0 line, you will find that, separation between this guy and this guy. So K is equal to 0 here, K is equal to 1 here. So I get a 4B, which is this separation. And otherwise, K keeps increasing by 1. I get this 2B separation either here or here, basically. And this has been, sort of experimentally very, very well validated, understood. In fact, this may be one of the methods by which I decide this B0 and which I use to decide the R0, interatomic separation of the molecule. So that's roughly your vibrational rotational spectrum. Okay. Okay, so this was all, when delta K has to be sort of 1. Okay. But recall there was another possibility that if lambda is not 0 to start with, right? So if the molecule is not in the lambda is equal to 0 state or the sigma state, basically. Okay. Then delta K is equal to 0 transitions are also allowed. And those are called the Q branch of the vibrational rotational motion, where I have h nu q is equal to E of nu plus 1k minus E of nu k. So this is just the h nu k, h bar sort of omega 0 energy separation is what I will get if I neglect any vibrational and rotational coupling in the energy band. So that's your third branch. So P branch, Q branch, and R branch basically. So delta K is plus 1, R branch. Delta K is equal to minus 1, P branch. Delta K is equal to 0 is the Q branch. So that's your atomic vibrational rotational transitions, which you will also observe as atomic lines. Okay, that's one. Then another kind of experiment you can do on atoms, etc., is this what is called scattering experiments. Okay, and we have not explicitly done the scattering theory, except that in few of the initial lectures we calculated the scattering cross section explicitly when we are doing this wave function picture of the atomic light matter interaction in atoms, etc. Okay, so there are generally two kinds of scattering experiments, you can say, Rayleigh scattering and the Raman scattering. So just like we defined, angular momentum transitions are there or not, we have this P branch, Q branch, etc. Similarly, for scattering light scattered from molecules experiment, we can have these two kinds of scattering, Rayleigh scattering and Raman scattering. We'll see in a minute what does it mean. Okay. And for these problems, we need to define the scattering cross section. Right? And we will not do this in detail, etc. But we just want to say that it depends on the interband component of the dipole matrix element, etc. BBA, etc. Okay. And the whole of whatever we did, etc., absorption, emission spectrum, that depended on the DAA, etc., or the permanent dipole moment of the molecule. And DAB is the induced dipole moment of the molecule. And that gives you new selection rules. Okay. Okay. So for this case, if you do the similar sort of calculation, etc., with interband cross section of the dipole matrix element, etc., then the selection rules we will get is delta K has to be either in multiples of 2, or I have to have delta K is equal to 0, basically. That is number one I'll get. And another condition I'll get for scattering is this energy conservation, etc. That if I go from A state to B state by incidenting a photon of energy h bar omega and emitting a photon of energy, let's say omega prime. Okay, so I input a photon and the output is also a photon, basically, right? So because of that, I have to change, when the incident photon interacts with the material, I have to change delta K by 1. And then the incident photon, when it is emitted, then again delta K changes by 1, basically. So the total delta K has to be in multiples of either 2 or it can be 0 also. So that's the broad way of seeing this quickly. Okay. And then I have this energy conservation principle that if omega bar is the energy of the emitted photon, and the scattering states I go from A to, let's say, B, then omega prime, so h bar omega prime plus EB has to be the final state energy, has to be the initial state energy as h bar omega plus EA, basically. Okay. So that's another rule that I have to follow. Okay. Okay. Then I can have two kinds of scattering, let's say, right, where omega prime is omega, so I did not excite any photon of higher energy. So if omega prime is omega, then that is called elastic scattering, energy conserving scattering, etc. For the photon also. There's no atomic transition can be involved because of this energy conservation relation. Incoming photon, outgoing photon, same energy. So no, I cannot have the difference energy in the atom. So no atomic transition, no molecular transitions. So that particular scattering is called the Rayleigh scattering. And when I have EA-EB transitions, etc., when omega prime is not omega, then I have inelastic scattering. So I hit some material with a ball, photon, and the photon got reflected back or emitted back, etc. And the energy of the thing I hit with is not same. So that's called the inelastic scattering. etc. And this is what is called physically the Raman scattering. Basically. So inelastic light matter scattering experiment involve Raman scattering. Okay. So Rayleigh scattering, Raman scattering. Okay. So we are in business. Okay. Okay. And then it turns out that in this kind of molecular systems, etc., this Raman scattering plays a very important role. Because if you remember in this dipole matrix element calculations, we got this in the denominator, we will get these terms like EB minus EA or the energy difference, etc. Okay. And for molecules, etc., we have this, electronic energy states, uh, and then we have this vibrational energy states, and then we have this rotational energy states, which are really, really close to each other, etc. So for this rotational degrees of freedom, or even for vibrational degrees of freedom, EB minus EA is much, much smaller number. So this number, the total number 1 by EB minus EA is relatively larger as compared to sort of molecules. Hello? Hello? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. I thought I got disconnected. So let me just cut. Okay. So I was just saying that, in scattering, I can have energy preserving scattering. Omega prime is equal to omega. That is Rayleigh scattering. Or energy non-preserving scattering, which is omega prime is not equal to omega, which is this Raman scattering, basically. Okay. And I was arguing that in molecules, I have a lot of this, vibrational and rotational energy states which are sort of close to each other as compared to the electronic states in atoms. So Raman scattering, which involves, terms like this 1 by EB minus EA in the dipole expectation value calculation, sort of, becomes stronger or plays a important role basically in figuring out the physical properties of molecules. Okay. Okay. Then in inelastic scattering, I can have two kinds of experiments now. So Raman scattering, let's say I can have, the output photon energy is less than the input photon energy, basically. Okay. So the output photon energy is less than the input photon energy, which means the molecule is in an excited state, basically, or EB, which is the excited state energy, is larger than the EA energy. Okay. So these kind of transitions are called Stokes lines for historical reasons. Okay. And if I have the opposite case where the outgoing photon energy is larger than the incoming photon energy, then the molecule is in a de-excited state, or EB is less than EA, and these kind of lines are called the anti-Stokes lines. So Raman scattering you should know, Stokes lines and anti-Stokes lines you should know. What you should know is delta K has to be plus minus 2 for Raman scattering, and so on. Okay. So the reason I am doing this, etc., is that if you can consider molecules like oxygen, hydrogen, uh, which are the same nucleus, basically A and B. Okay. So homonuclear molecules. Then for such molecules, we showed that the parity operator is a good operator, etc. And because of the parity operator, I can show that dA has to be 0. Right. So we also showed this when we actually were discussing dipole matrix element, that if a atom has a definite parity, then for those states which have a definite parity, this dA has to vanish, basically. If dA is 0, then I cannot get any absorption or emission spectrum for this rotational and vibrational states, basically. That was the important idea. But even if I do not get any absorption or emission states because of this, parity symmetry for these molecules, the Raman spectrum doesn't really depend on this parity symmetry, etc., because I'm calculating A and B states expectation value of the dipole operator, and the A and B states can be of different parity and so on and so forth, etc. And these molecules show very nice Raman lines, etc., which still allows you to prove the molecules. Okay. So that's the importance of Raman scattering. Uh, Particularly for molecules, and in particular even more for exploring this vibrational rotational spectrum of homonuclear molecules. Okay. Okay, so if I just take this picture of Stokes and anti-Stokes lines, etc., then let's just convert it into this picture. So new, right? So I will have some transition, vibrational transition around some h bar omega naught. H bar omega naught, let me call a nu basically. And then I'll have this Stokes and anti-Stokes lines basically. Right. So Stokes lines EB has to be higher than EA. So Stokes lines will always be higher energy or to the right of this h bar nu, etc. And oh, am I missing something? Okay, so I think I mixed writing something here. So the higher energy line should be Stokes lines, basically not anti-Stokes line. And on the left side should have anti-Stokes lines, basically. So this picture is wrong. This caption of this lines is sort of wrong. So these are Stokes lines, higher energy, and at lower energy I have the anti-Stokes lines, etc. In the Stokes lines, anti-Stokes lines, both cases I have to have delta K is equal to 2. The angular momentum has to change by 2. So for angular momentum change of 2, if I calculate, then the energy separation has to be 2 times the angular momentum change, which is 4b by h bar, etc. And if you calculate that, on the positive side and the negative side, etc., then you will find that the first Stokes lines and the first anti-Stokes lines, they have to have a difference of 12b by h, basically. So this I'll leave you to show explicitly. And if I do not have a molecular transition, so I am at the same nu, etc., then I have a Rayleigh scattering which involves zero momentum, zero angular momentum change. So I'm at the same nu. I do not do this vibrational level transition, and that is this Rayleigh scattering. Okay, so that's all I have here today, basically, and we'll stop here. Okay. So this is just Raman scattering for the rotational degrees of freedom. So I'm not even doing vibrational transitions. Okay. So I'm just sitting at some energy level h nu, etc., and then I'm just transiting, doing this vibrational degrees of freedom transition here. Okay. So delta K is equal to 2. I go from, K is equal to 0, let's say. I get this, K plus 1. So that will start giving me 6B by H, basically. And the so since I move by 2K, between these two Stokes lines, etc., I'll get a 4B by H. And similarly, I'll get a 4B by H in anti-Stokes lines, and so on. And when I do not have any rotational transition, I do not have any vibrational transition, I do not have any rotational electronic transition also, then I am sitting at this point, which is correspond to Rayleigh scattering. So I'll stop here today, and then we will continue tomorrow a bit more on this electronic transitions, vibrational transitions, and rotational transitions again a bit. And then on a bit more on polyatomic molecules, let's say. Particularly, I wanted to discuss this case of ammonia and the ammonia measure, etc. But before closing, just this one more picture. Okay, so this is the picture, nice picture, which I already showed. But now in terms of spectroscopy, so I had this E is equal to let's say lower energy state. I have I is equal to higher energy state. Between each of these states, I have a lot of vibrational degrees of freedom, etc. And you can do these transitions between electronic states. So I have electronic transitions, UV, visible region, can have absorption, emission. Then you can have transition between these two lines here, etc., which is this rotational vibrational transitions, which we discussed explicitly today. And that is shown in this inset on the right, where I just zoom in of these two figures, etc. So you get this, new lines, and for each of these new lines, you have these different K lines, etc. So the different K lines are labeled as J lines here, etc. And then you can have transitions between the same new state, so pure rotational transition or rotational vibrational transitions, etc. So today we saw briefly, basically, a bit of pure rotational transition, and we saw rotational vibrational transitions, etc.